In a bold move that reignites debate over U.S. immigration and foreign policy, Congresswoman Delia Ramirez DL has formally demanded a congressional hearing to investigate whether American taxpayer dollars have contributed to human rights violations at El Salvador's notorious Megaprison, the Centro de Confinamiento del Terrorismo CECOT. The call comes amid growing concerns over the U.S. government's alleged role in funding deportations that resulted in hundreds of migrants being sent to a facility widely condemned for torture, inhumane treatment, and abuse. Ramirez's demand centers on a secretive deportation agreement, reportedly orchestrated under the Trump administration, that funneled approximately $6 million into El Salvador in exchange for that country's cooperation in receiving suspected gang members expelled from the United States. Many of these individuals, Venezuelans, Salvadorans, and others, were deported under the Alien Enemies Act, a centuries-old law that critics say is now being weaponized to strip migrants of due process protections. Among those caught in the dragnet are vulnerable asylum seekers and U.S. residents, some of whom were denied access to attorneys and legal proceedings. Advocates and attorneys have confirmed that at least 300 migrants were sent to CECOT, where they were subjected to horrific conditions including beatings, starvation, prolonged isolation, and sexual abuse. Some detainees were targeted solely based on their tattoos or appearance, not credible gang affiliations. Congresswoman Ramirez, a member of the House Homeland Security Committee and one of the first Latina Midwesterners elected to Congress, has repeatedly criticized the use of overseas prisons to detain individuals deported by the U.S. She argues that such actions violate both domestic law and international treaties, including the Convention Against Torture, which prohibits transferring individuals to countries where there is a substantial risk of mistreatment. In her letter to committee leadership, Ramirez said, "We must investigate whether U.S. taxpayer money has been used to finance illegal deportations and fund human rights abuses. Congress has a moral and constitutional responsibility to provide oversight over these deeply troubling actions." She also called on the Department of Homeland Security and the State Department to disclose the full extent of their role in the deportation agreement and explain the vetting procedures used to identify targets. Ramirez emphasized that the lack of transparency surrounding the deal undermines public trust and raises questions about the executive branch's unilateral power in handling deportations. One of the most striking cases cited by Ramirez is that of Kilmer Armando Abrego Garcia, a Venezuelan asylum seeker who had lived in Maryland, despite a U.S. Supreme Court ruling that his deportation was unconstitutional. He was transferred to CECOT, where he suffered severe abuse. His eventual release came only after significant diplomatic pressure and media attention, highlighting what Ramirez called a complete collapse of legal safeguards. Ramirez has previously led efforts, alongside Rep. Nydia Velázquez and other progressive lawmakers, to halt further deportations to CECOT. Their letters to the Biden administration demanded a moratorium on the practice and immediate investigation into the conditions at the prison. Yet little has been disclosed publicly, leading to growing frustration among immigrant rights advocates and lawmakers. Despite this push, Republican leadership in Congress has so far resisted authorizing a bipartisan congressional delegation to visit El Salvador and investigate the prison firsthand. One GOP committee chair even suggested that Democrats fund their own travel if they were so determined to see the conditions, a response Ramirez called callous and irresponsible. Her renewed demand for a congressional hearing comes at a pivotal moment, as immigration remains a politically explosive issue heading into the 2026 midterm elections. Ramirez believes the American public deserves to know whether its tax dollars are being used to violate international law and facilitate torture. She concluded her appeal by saying, "This is not about politics. This is about whether the United States is living up to its values, whether we are defending human dignity or enabling oppression abroad." The pressure is now on congressional leadership to determine whether they will allow an open hearing on the matter. As demands for transparency grow louder, the role of the U.S. in El Salvador's harsh anti-gang crackdown may soon face the public reckoning many believe is long overdue.